Well, I saw you giving a talk at like an internal conference, if you will, that we had recently, and it was great hearing you go over. There's a phrase that we don't hear much in the technology, exciting world of technology and cloud native, and that is business case. And I thought that like looking at the kind of organizations that you work at and that I talk with all the time. It is for as thrilling as a technology as a technology can be. Oftentimes, there's a lot of effort put into just getting it there and getting it set up. And so I thought it'd be great to have you on here to talk about that more. But before that, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Kerry Schaffer. I'm senior director of technology and partnerships at One Magnify. I manage basically all of our infrastructure teams, including the platform teams for TAS. One Magnify is a marketing company, and we basically provide specialized services to our customers in the area of marketing technology and analytics. We're really trying to drive their results and amplify their business, their business value of their marketing efforts. And so a lot of the work that we do, I find is different than a lot of the other potentially Tanzu customers because they do a lot of internal work for themselves. We do a lot of work for our clients, and we only do the work that's necessary for ourselves because we're very client focused. We're looking to make a huge impact for our clients. So business cases are incredibly important to our company as being in the space that we're in.
Yeah. I like the idea of doing the minimal for ourselves. That's something I need to consider for my own life. Just seeing I need to do the business case on me doing less.
Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah, I know some of the customers that you have are like pretty, large, big name customers that need a good scale for the type of marketing that they do. So it's one of those businesses where technology and software and like cloud stuff is obviously necessary, incredibly important. So let's talk about you get this feeling that you need, like you're saying, you run the platform teams or you manage them. And you need a new sort of kind of big platform technology. And where do you start after that? I mean, you have so many choices. You've got a bunch of people involved. Like, what happens before the business case where you've selected something and you're kind of justifying doing it and getting budget for it?
So typically a business need is what drives any big changes we make. I would love to say we get things in house and there are times where we do POCs with software, but when we go to actually make a big acquisition of software, there has to be a business case that's driving it. So we'll go out and look at all the different, options in the market that could solve that problem. And we'll actually first, we're just doing a fit analysis. So we're looking at the problem that we have and then what's the fit? Where is it going to run? How much is it going to cost? And so you're doing those high level, you're I would say high to medium level, investigations into figuring out which are actually going to fit your business case the best. And so we tend to go through that first, and we go through all the different options, and we actually have to write out the reasons why some software fits and some software doesn't, because we will be asked about that when we actually go to make our final justification. Because, one of the things we're going to get asked is, what else did you look at? Did you look at anything else, or is this the only thing you're bringing? And so, we always try to find our top three and at least look at like 3 different software options or 3 different, platform options. And then before we go into, the actual, all your ROI documents and looking at, acquisition and, going through and looking at the business cases for why you're doing it too, you're also looking at the people you have. So it's a completely brand new technology and I have to train the whole staff that doesn't align with anything that they already know. That's a factor. So you gotta have, so you're looking for fit within the organization as well. So if it's a Linux-based program or a Java-based program, I can go, okay, I got people in the house that could quickly learn this. If it's something completely new, then, it's something that's harder for our teams to learn. Like, so for example, Kubernetes, we brought that in, and some of that, runs in, environments that we already know. But, the setting up the environments using like, YAML and building out your pipelines and things like that. If it's an all new language, we know that that's going to add an extra overhead. So that all goes into the consideration. And then once we come up with the software that we want, we start working on, the rationalization for that purchase and start deep diving into all the business case components that, are going to be required. Because when we acquire software at One Magnify, or when we're pitching that to our upper management, there's going to be a lot of questions asked. So you need to have your business case solid, and then you've also got to have your financials pretty much bulletproof, because you're going to have to walk through that with the CEO and the CFO, and they're going to be asking a million questions.
Yeah, it seems like the leadership y'all have is pretty technical, if I remember right. Hence the questions about like fitness and fit and things like that. So it's as you're saying, you have two things you have to put up with. the business case, and also like, does it work case. And I'm curious, like hearing you go through that, about that kind of second group of things. Like I feel like it can be difficult to sort of do the case for it works, right? And like it's the right fit for what we want. And then especially somehow I was going to say measuring, but I'll instead say representing, or somehow describing like, well, we don't really know how this works, right? And that's, we're anticipating it'll be difficult for us to figure this out because, as you were saying, like we haven't done this before, right? And on and on and on, right? And so like I've seen people over the years, like to put it another way, everyone wants good developer productivity, right? And it's kind of, there's not exactly like a like number you can put in a spreadsheet that's like, this one is a 6, right? Like it's going in, we know that developer productivity is a 6 or whatever, or all these kind of other things that are around it. So I'll get around to a question eventually, but like, how do you represent the, like, this fits what we need and want? Like, how do you go over that?
So a lot of that comes from looking at like case studies or in white papers and like researching all the documentation. That is actually a big part of my job, especially when it comes to acquiring new software or justifying software increases. And if we have other similar products that have done similar things, like let's say we have this group of work that now we're trying to modernize, but it needs a specialized platform, which, it would be nice to say all your different software products that you're delivering for your customers could fit on one platform, but that's not really true. So
right,
you're going to have multiple. So when you're looking at that, part of it is you're looking at the enablement that, the other similar products that we've developed, like that is a big business case for us. That's a better number for me to quote than something I've just read in a white paper from a different kind of a company,
Right.
So I'm looking for those referenceable items, and then I have to actually turn that into dollars, right? So like I was just looking at like something for TKG, and it said it increases developer productivity by 37%. I got to find a weird calculus number and one that I can justify and actually back into. Well, if it's going to increase their productivity by 37%, that means we're going to get 30% more billable work out of them. And how many people is it? Yeah. Then actually take those numbers and multiply it out and have, it's funny because I do a lot of the coding for the company as well. So I never was a math person. I kind of always hated math in school and everything to get out of it. But it's such a huge part of my job in a leadership role is having that math and understanding that financial acumen and the business acumen. You have to actually combine both of those together. And I'm actually better, oddly, and I don't really like this, but I'm better with the financial acumen than I am with the business acumen. I'm more comfortable in that space because math is math, and it's like very, you know, if you're doing it right, you're only going to get one answer. It's not very well. It's not
Yeah.
It's very opinionated and like,
Yeah. And also like the scenarios you were just describing, there's, like once you've built up kind of, as you were saying, like there's other instances where we've put this platform or this technology in place or done this kind of calculation. Like one, you kind of build up an experience of models you can use, like ways you can think about what's happening. And then also like math can be nice because like you said, it's just like deterministic. It's just like, as long as we agree on like, we have these 5 numbers, we put them in the formula and there's the answer. Whereas like, business strategy stuff is like, well, we'll see what happens. Like, will people like this or not?
Yeah. And employee satisfaction, like, because that's factor 2. So you're looking at 2 different things, right? You're looking at the cost benefit analysis. So like all your ROI, you're looking at that, and that is easier, I think, in many cases that like when you're making the business justification and I say, okay, developer productivity, less frustration at work, what does that equal? And then you basically equal that out to employee happiness. Well, that's a sliding scale based on each person. So you gotta, you're benchmarking that, but you also, it's based on testimonial, which is much more subjective and harder. Like if you're in trying to justify that software and I say, okay, well, the developers, like when we did this before for this other product, the developers are happier, they had less frustration. But then, maybe there's that one person who had like a gripe and, you're going to have to, well, what about what happened with this and this person? It's like, okay, it's much more subjective than, that's the financial side. So, really in that case, you have to either say, well, this person was unhappy because of these reasons, but then, 6 of their colleagues were happier because of these other reasons.
Yeah.
You get a 6-to-1. And so in an organization like ours, like we're one of the best places to work. And part of that is because we care about our employees and what they want. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to not think about that person who had a bad experience in a similar product. We, just because the other 6 liked it. But, it's one of those things where, that could end up being something where we have to do a bunch of meetings and go back to the drawing table and figure out how we can make it so that person isn't unhappy again.
Yeah. That's reminded me of a conversation I had just this morning with my daughter. She bikes to school and her bike chain was broken. So I had to take her in this big bucket bike, or bakfiets, as they say here in the Netherlands. And, she every time I have her in there, she reminds me of like the 2 times that the bike fell over, and she's very good at telling the stories. And so this morning, she's kind of like your 1 out of 6 developers. And this morning I was asking her like, well, do you remember all the times we didn't fall over? Which is like, every day. And of course her answer was no.
Well, they do say that humans, and this is, this goes across the board with a lot of things. We are more wired to think about like the negative things. And it kind of comes from, like when we were cavemen, right? We saw the saber-toothed tiger and you either ran or you were saber-toothed tiger lunch. Well, you either ran or fought. But if you did neither and you sat there, so you have those negative experiences, they say, in our brain, because I'm not a psychologist, but I've read a lot of studies. They say that those stick with us stronger than a positive memory does.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's definitely a factor because, everybody who's involved and everybody who's a stakeholder in whatever it is that we're bringing in, we are going to consider their opinion. And so if it's not the opinion that you want, you still have to listen to it. You still have to accommodate for it. It's definitely a tricky thing about bringing in new software products because they're, you think on the surface that is a cut and dry, like a financial decision, but there's a lot of emotion involved too. People worry about is it going to automate me out of my job? Is it going to be something that, sends too many alerts and isn't configured right. And all of a sudden I have to work extra hours. There's just all these considerations that are very emotional. And so when you're talking with, acquisition of software, you do have to be ready to handle, when you're building out your cases, you have to be, ready to handle all the personalities and all the different personas of your stakeholders and, just be mentally ready because there will be people who are going to be unhappy about it.
So to ask, well, what sounds like to y'all's daily life there, what would be an odd question? Like, let's assume for whatever reason, you get hired to go work at a new place that isn't as great, as what Magnify is. Who knows why? And they're basically like, their executives are like, we love how stuff was run over there. Can you we don't really do that here. Can you set it up here? Right. And then, as let's say it's a gigantic company, right? So as often happens, the executives at the top are like, this stuff is great. It needs to happen. And then they kind of you get in your little boat to go to the rest of the bureaucracy and they give you a smiling, push off into it. And then you got to go talk with everyone else. And so given the situation you were saying, how would you, again, this will sound weird, but how would you convince people that having happy developers is a good idea?
So it's interesting because we're doing a little bit of consulting work with a customer that brought us in on one of their platforms because they're having a hard time with adoption. And so we're kind of living this right now. So the first thing you really have to do is listen. So you have to actively listen. As humans, especially if I worked on this proposal or whatever it is and getting this software and implemented, I kind of am already probably coming at it from a naturally defensive, I need to defend my case, right? You have to spend your self-interest, which is hard. I mean, I'm telling you, that's probably the hardest thing because especially with a person like me, when they say something that, doesn't track with, what I know statistically is an accurate statement, my first instinct is, I want to debate them, but you have to actually stop first. You listen, you write down all of their concerns. You need to be able to speak it back to them in a way that they know at least they're being heard because for a lot of people, that really helps them.
Yeah.
And then from there, you start, you don't just take them down and then wash them under the rug and feel good. Okay, well, I pat myself on the back. I listen to that person.
It's not a checklist.
Yeah. So you actually have to go back and start talking to them, having discussions about, well, here's what the, all the documentation said. Here's what I would have. Let's say, for example, for me, from my prior experience at another company, and you need to actually go through and unpack those worries because what they're presenting, the old iceberg idea, what they're showing you as their, the tip of the iceberg, what they're actually talking to you about. There's a lot of other things that are underneath. So you have to go in and it takes time and patience. And, it really is important for a proper adoption because you want everybody, you're only going to get the results that you're preaching you're going to get if people buy in and actually start using software. And so, or the platform or whatever it is, right? So you have to actually start unpacking and working with that person and figure out what's under the surface there and figure out how are we going to make it so this person feels comfortable, especially if they're a stakeholder.
Yeah.
Or there are a lot of people who are not necessarily a stakeholder, but they've got the stakeholder fear.
Right. I mean, that's a good point is I don't know, the kind of, I always imagine they're the people who are sitting in the chairs along the wall of the conference room.
Yes.
who have a sometimes even, well, frequently even a more powerful part of the process than the people at the table because around the edges, they're the ones who get delegated the work oftentimes. So they're the ones who have direct control over what the thinking is and how it meshes with everything. Yeah. And it seems also one of the things I think about and talk about with people a lot is, I mean, you you said it exactly, is, well, once you get this technology in place, if your developers or your operations people or whoever, if they don't like it, they're like not going to do a good job. Like they're not going to be, intrinsically motivated to like understand the tool and figure out how to use it best. And like, maybe wait 5 more minutes before they go to lunch.
Yeah.
to put up with it or whatever. Right. Like, and so it is like, it's really important that you get them enthusiastic about it, because I think as you said, well, right. Like the business assumptions you're making about how that tool is going to work and make things better, like really rely on the people using it to do a good job. Like you probably don't make a business case that starts with assume people are terrible.
Yeah. No, but and I don't know that terrible is really the word, but like the people have an incredible impact on the output. Like, so
yeah,
if you're going to get if you're going to get the usage that you want out of a platform or a tool, the people, like we were saying, they have to be invested. And so like one of the things we did was, I think back to like when we implemented TAS, which is, back then it was PCF. And so we implemented it with a smaller team. So we had a smaller team, and like some of the ways we got, there were teams that at first were not even interested. They were like, sounds like a bunch of, gibberish, and it's not going to be exciting. We're not going to get all this. So what we basically did was we kind of set up this cross-functional team that actually managed the platform. And it included like the development teams, the platform teams, like cybersecurity. So all these different people from all these different areas were actually like coming together and working on it. And one of the psychology things that I did was I put that meeting right in the middle of our collaboration area around like where all the other developers were, because it was a fun project and we had a good time. And when we were sitting there and the developers were talking about the great things that had happened and their successes, other people were hearing it. And so once they started hearing about like, person A is doing this very cool thing and they had this great result and oh my gosh, they love it and they're having so much fun. The other teams are start to like, even you have some people who are technology curmudgeons. They know what they know and that's what they know and that's what they want to know. And that's how they've been doing it for years. And, they can't imagine it being better. But even those people, when they start hearing about the cool things other people are doing, you kind of stoke up this natural jealousy.
Yeah.
So like, why do they get to do that and I can't? And I'm like, you care. Just join the fun, right? Join the team. And so it was almost like it was odd because we started with a very small, like POC kind of team.
Yeah.
Within like a month and a half or so, they had, it had swept across the organization, and the other teams that couldn't use it because of technical reasons were getting very frustrated too. Like, I want to go do that cool stuff, but like my app is architected in such a way, it's not like in this case, cloud native. And so it was interesting. And, people came and got on the bandwagon. We didn't have to actually force anybody. And that's your best case scenario, which is not always going to be the reality of potentially what happens.
Yeah. You want pull for your platform instead of push, right?
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's a clever technique to like, do your initial stuff and ongoing, like in the middle of a space, like where there's, so to speak, high foot traffic.
Yeah.
And what do you do? Like, what do you do ongoing? Like, I see a lot of people having internal conferences and things like that. But how do you like drive awareness and interest and adoption? Like, I don't know, over the next 12 months or whatever. Like once you've set things up.
Now it is absolutely very different. In the past, we had those weekly sessions where you could come in and we would help you. If you had a problem, you'd have somebody you could, there's always somebody you could put in a ticket and talk to, and will help you with your problem. But, those were like basically like open office hours, and they were several times a week. I think we were doing them 3 times a week. And so, there are times when it's hard for certain team members because they want to figure things out on their own. And sometimes they're a little intimidated to go ask for help, because there's often office hours there. open office hours where they can come and they feel like they'll get an answer and somebody's going to work with them. And, there's no fear of like ridicule or fear of like failure, in that kind of scenario for a person. People will actually come and continue to have those type of conversations and feel comfortable. And especially once, they've done it once or twice, right? The first time's probably a little scarier, but, the second, third time, it's, they realize like this person's here to help me and, and
Right.
help work through this. And so when you have new people who are adopting technology who probably feel a little bit behind the others, or even like people are working on the technology and you want to keep that cadence and happiness going, having that kind of interpersonal relationships and in conversations is very important. In the since we did a lot of that pre-COVID, so we did it in person. And so post-COVID, we've tended to do the same type of meetings, and the same type of office hours. And it does help because people will come to those and they might say, okay, well, when you first get there, whatever, I don't have any topics for today. But then like when you're sitting there and you're kind of bantering, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I have been working on this thing and,
Right.
what do you think of this? And so you can still get a lot of that type of interactions. The thing that you're definitely going to miss is the actual like excitement you can build by just having people overhear things, but still rumors go through the company pretty quick. So if developer A is on that platform team and they're having a great time and they're having a good experience, they're talking to the other people in the organization and it's still going to spread. It won't be as quick. So that's
a topic I'm always interested in. Is I was thinking of this a few weeks ago that essentially, if you're introducing like a platform for developers to use and a new way of working, all this stuff, that pretty early on you need to establish like a word of mouth campaign for marketing, right? Like, I mean, you have to do marketing and take in consideration all the marketing stuff kind of implied internally, right? And like it's both intimidating and also comforting because, like, I don't know, in IT, marketing isn't like a core strength or a core strength in the sense of something anyone cares to do, right? Yeah. Like it's not something that you do. However, also like marketing is pretty well understood. Like you're not like reinventing things. Like it's just like there might be a lot of possible ways to do marketing, but all of them are pretty easy. And proven out. So like, do you sort of like, what's the word? Like consciously or strategically, like, are you kind of on the lookout for like, these three people, if we could just go get them to talk to those people, that would be great. Like, are you trying to like set the board up that way so that people talk with each other?
Yes. So I do it two different ways. So we just, we're right now rolling out another platform. And the first thing I did was I actually had, we do these events. So thankfully, I kind of have an advantage because I'm on the team that runs the IT events for the company. So the first thing I did was said, okay, I'm going to do like a 101. I'm going to answer all your questions. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you how to register for it. And let's just do a quick half-an-hour meeting and get people like understanding what it is, how to use it, how to navigate and all that. And so we had a meeting on it and that was pretty successful. But then, you get 60 people. We probably have like 150, 175 developers at one Magnify. You still don't have everybody. And so like after that, you strategically have to start talking to people like, have you told your team about, this?
Yeah.
And you kind of have to touch point with them and say, you did so great here. It'd be great if you shared that with the rest of your team so that they could have the same experience. Because not everybody thinks to do that. There's a lot of people, it's funny because like, there's a lot of different personalities in IT. And I think there's, the stereotypical one we all think about, which is not necessarily an extrovert, but you do have some good extroverts and they'll go and have that discussion pretty easily. So,
yeah.
And then you have other people, I'm sorry. Somebody's here actually fertilizing my yard.
That's fine. It has to grow.
Yeah, especially in Michigan. Okay, so So yeah, and then once they think about that, they go, okay, some people aren't going to do it, right? Some people are introverts to the point where they're not going to do it. So maybe you have to reach out. You have to kind of know people and their personalities. It's harder in big organizations. When I joined One Magnify, we were a very small company, probably about 50 people. And now we're like over 650 people. So it's not as easy because, it's hard to know everybody in a company that size, especially when you get up into these huge companies. But if you can do that organically through the people you know and maybe get that spreading, then that's the best way to do it, because even myself, I don't have the time to go talk to all those developers one-on-one.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, well, I think it is. It doesn't seem like it is the case. It's someone like yourself and then other people who are trying to introduce the platform out there. They need to have, I don't know, enjoy socializing with people and enjoy, or I guess you don't have to enjoy it. You need the ability to do it and to do it, which it sure is nice to enjoy things you have to do.
It is
like, but it is like a major component that, I talk with a lot of like infrastructure teams who have, for example, like built out their Kubernetes clusters and their infrastructure. And they'll either explicitly say it, or you can kind of tell they're always a little bit like confused or upset that it doesn't get used more. Right. And oftentimes what's missing is what you were just going over is like, well, you got to go out and like tell people about it. Not only tell them about it, but when there's success, like get them to help you like market it and go, like it's a very like, you have to put a lot of effort, especially initially, into just getting people interested in using it and then spreading the word for you.
Yeah. That is a huge thing. And, I know, like I was talking earlier about this consulting engagement we're doing. That's kind of the problem that they had. It was built specifically for one thing, and their developers don't really know about it, and and so in some cases, in a lot of big organizations, what you see is they'll start building another platform that's similar. Like they'll ask for another platform to be built for their business case, and it'll be very similar. And like all of a sudden, as an organization, you're paying for two different platforms that are especially providing the same services because your development teams aren't talking. And so, getting that word of mouth out and really talking to people and making sure that everybody's aware of it. So, it is incredibly important. And so whatever that, there's two different ways. There's that high level communication. Like at our company, we have, company communications or like town halls, and sometimes, you walk somebody through like the newest platform we were launching. I just did some information on it in the town hall. That's a good way to make everybody kind of aware of it. But you also have to understand those, informal business, practices and informal business, like I guess I would say leaders for each of the groups. And you can actually, and so it may not be like going for me, I could go to my peer who manages all of development, but I don't really know that he's going to have time to go down or talk to all those developers. But if I know who are his informal leads, his formal and informal leads underneath of that, and even in some cases, the people who have the great personality, like I can tell you, I know who in the organization has a great personality who I can say, take this message out and they're going to go talk to 30 people because they like talking to 30 people. And so
right.
Understand those avenues. You're going to get a better adoption than just relying on, the information going out in company emails or the information being done at a town hall. It seems like that raises awareness and it'll work a little, but that the informal communications that, internally within the teams, especially if you have a team member who can say, I did this and it was really cool and here's why, and they're willing to go talk to people about that, that is actually probably going to be your best chance of bringing new users to that platform.
Yeah. And you also like you mentioned something that, in there a little while back that made me think of like one way of expressing the business case of happiness, like, which is, if they're not happy, they're going to make their own thing. or, we're going to have more than one or, depending on the size of the organization, we're going to have more than 2 or 3. Like we're going to have too many ways of people solving this problem. And that is a lot more quantifiable as far as like, and now we're paying for all of this stuff, right? And then, and then just to pick one thing, I mean, you have a security background. And then, so that also means that like, and now we have to pay for another like set of security, like controls and audits and stuff, like for all these additional things. So if we can reduce down, and then there's all the other things, right? Like if our theory, which as you're saying has been proven out several times, is that the more we socialize or have happy developers, then we actually can have a really direct, like, spreadsheetable number here that over the long term, we have just one place that things are done. And I would imagine often, I mean, many of the organizations I talk with, they're starting with too many platforms, right? So you almost don't have to convince them of that being the case. They're like, yes, that's our problem, is like people went off and did all their own stuff. So now they will understand a lot more that like you need to do all of this marketing and socializing of it and just target happiness. Otherwise, whatever business case and ROI you had is not going to work out very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds very cliche, and people have been saying it for years, but productivity, giving them the ability to be easily productive with less frustrations, you get more work put through. Because like I can tell you, before PCF, like we had some automation in place, but it wasn't what we have now. And the developers used to have to put in a series of tickets, and that always led to frustration because, then you had all these different people working on it. Like you had a ticket for the DBA team, and you had a ticket for the system administration team, and you essentially have tickets for the security team and then the network team. And you like all those things have to happen in concert. And if one of those things gets messed up, like let's say you have 10 tickets to launch a project, if one of those things gets messed up, then, all of a sudden it's all brand new. So you're pointing fingers, you're trying to figure out which part isn't right. And there's a lot of frustration to it. And we found that ate a lot of developers' time. And then it also made them very unhappy, which, we all hear about these things, but really we've seen the benefits. Like there's no way. There's been programs that we've launched, in 2020 we won the CIO 100 award because of work that we did for our customers. That was incredibly impactful. But the truth is, we had such a tight timeline then on that project that the developers weren't fully enabled. That would have been a whole different story. I mean, it would have probably still would have gotten it done because that's how we are at One Magnify. But, instead of everybody celebrating that as a success and it being like a happy story and like really like a success story, that would have been a success story for the customer. But internally, there's a lot of hard feelings now,
Right. It would have been the thing where everyone needs like some bonus vacation.
Yes.
So recuperate and get their mind set right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned this a little earlier, but like how, I mean, it's related, but somewhat of a new topic. Like, I don't know, what do you think about Kubernetes? How is that fitting into everything? Like, where do you see, since you're, have used PCF and Taz for a while and other things, like, how is that fitting into the portfolio that you have? What's it doing for you? What's the need?
So Kubernetes is a more flexible platform. You can put things on it, like apps on it, that you can't put into a very opinionated platform like Taz, like the Tanzu application service. But what we found is that it's not as easy for developers. Like our developers, they push their code into Git, and then there's a series of checks that it goes through, and then an approval sign off, and then it goes to production.
Right.
They have to write these, actually they don't even have to really write the YAML files. So we're trying to build that same thing for Kubernetes, but it's not as opinionated. There's more things that the developers could do with it. But at the same time, it's harder for them. It adds an extra layer of complexity to them. And our developers, I don't want to say spoiled because, there's a good reason for them being spoiled. We spoiled them to make them super happy and make them super productive. But Kubernetes, is going to have certain business cases. that's what I'm seeing with it so far, because it's not as easy. And if the developers can, in our case, the developer's going to take the easiest, most effective path. They're delivering value to the customer, and they're going to do that. The faster that they can do that, the more value that they can deliver. So it's not something they're doing selfishly, but if they're going to get the same value from using another platform that's faster, they're going to do that. And that's,
right.
It's a benefit to the customer as well. So, but Kubernetes is definitely, we've been working with it, and we implemented, so one of the things is, we've implemented a couple different flavors of it, but most recently we've been implementing TKG, and, we struggled with it at first. Like we didn't fully implement it because, before TAP came out, because I knew my use cases on that were limited and people were going to be unhappy with it. But we had started rolling it out, and then TAP came out, and we quickly adopted that. And that solved a good portion of that, the same issues, right? The same worries about, not having to, have everything automated or having these check marks. So we built the whole supply chain there and did it with the development teams. And so we made it an easier to use version of Kubernetes. And so we're trying to get that same level of automation out of Kubernetes that you do in Taz. But I think part of why Taz is so easy for developers is it's very opinionated. You can't break the whole platform. Developer, it's just like, it won't let them do that. In Kubernetes, we've had apps deployed that have broken a cluster. And it puts more onus back on the developers. And, I think it's incredibly important. I think it's the way of the future. But I think companies need to keep working on the abstraction layer so that it's a better developer experience than it currently is. And TAP was a huge step forward, but really, across the board, it's still not as easy as, whether you think about Taz or whether you think about, Cloud Run and like GCP, like all of those types of systems, they're easier to use than Kubernetes. And when you
yeah. I think it's only, as I'm sure you've witnessed firsthand, right? It's only in the last, I don't know, let's say 2 years or so. I got to check what year it is. I'm always forgetting, but like 2 years or so that there really is like a lot more attention to that developer layer in the Kubernetes world, right? Like there was just getting the orchestrator, the container as a service layer all set up was many years of work. and now it's great. There is more attention to that layer, and hopefully there'll be a lot more. But yeah, it's, there's the idea that floats around every now and then that like Kubernetes is meant for building platforms, not an end platform on its own, which I think is what you see a lot of nowadays. And then also, like, I think, I'm always interested in what people say in response to that question, because there's a weird moment in that technology of, as you were just saying, like there's agreement that it's the way of the future, right?
Yeah.
And then people say, but it's also very difficult to use, and we're not like using it for everything yet. And so like it's an interesting study, speaking of marketing, of how a technology gets kind of over, as we used to say, the chasm, where it gets to that inevitability that everyone's interested in it, and they like are willing to basically co-develop with the Kubernetes ecosystem, like finishing it out, which is like, it's almost impossible to track down. but it's probably, I don't think it's the only way that like a technology sort of wins, but it's one of the major ways that it happens, that there's just this inexplainable, like everyone agrees this is the one, even though we're not all using it like to maximum effect at the moment.
Yeah. But it was interesting because we definitely had some people in the organization when we first were implementing TKG. You have people who love, like I always think of our solution architects at VMware. They love playing and tinkering and like learning new things. Makes them very happy to have it and play with it. But like, it's not a successful platform unless you actually get, get it out to the masses and people are deploying to it, you're not going to make your money back. You're going to miss your ROI factors.
Right.
Sure. Isn't good.
Yeah, you're going to need a lot of usage.
Yeah.
See, my dog gets very excited as well. There's no fertilizer or trains, but I've got this dog.
Thankfully, mine are upstairs. Otherwise, they'd be barking their heads off too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the last thing I was going to ask about now, we mentioned you have a background in security, and when I have watched you talk a few times, you're very interested in getting more women involved in technology. Because I remember one story you told is that was it a security conference that you went to, or like a meeting, and you were like the only woman there. and I mean, there's what I liked about the way you talked about doing, how you go about this is like, it's almost like, I don't understand why more, like, everyone and more women should want to be in tech. It's great. Right? Like, so you spend a fair amount of time evangelizing for it. So like, I mean, like, what advice do you give other people who also would want to go kind of evangelize to bring more women in? Like, what are the techniques you use? Like, what you're looking out for? Like, what's the toolkit that you can give out?
So I don't want to stereotype all women because I'm super nerdy and the nerdy stuff gets me super excited. But I think for us to be very successful in bringing more women in IT, I think we need to openly acknowledge there's all these different roles in IT. Because when I've met so many women, including my own niece, which I've told the story over and over again about how, she lived with me and she was interning at One Magnify. And when I would say to her, when she was in college, go into IT, she would act like, I was trying to make her miserable and run her life. Uh-huh. So long story short, eventually she came into IT and she is now a desktop administrator. She's gone through a couple different administration phases, but she really loves the desktop administration. And I said to her one day, I said, what do you love about your job? And she said, I help people all day, every day. And so there's all these different stories of different types of jobs that women could, potentially gravitate towards, and different personality types. But I think when we talk about IT, we only talk about the tech. And so in some cases, we're actually missing a lot of, a pretty good demographic because, there's a lot of women I've brought into IT that don't want to be a developer. They don't want to be a system admin. They don't want to play with the newest, coolest tech. They want to be able to help people. They want to be able to work in a job where they feel like they can have, they can have an impact, from like all these different aspects, right? From a cultural aspect, from the marketing aspect, from a, social aspect. And so there's all these different jobs in IT. And I think we really only talk about two types of jobs when we're really out trying to promote it to people, kind of development and infrastructure jobs. And we know that there's project managers, there's product owners, there's agile managers, there's QA people, quality assurance people that are needed. There's, there's help desk people. There's such a big, expansive, amount of jobs that are available in IT. And I think that's the thing that we're missing. And then the other thing I think that women don't understand about IT jobs is, for women, and for anybody, and I, as much as I advocate specifically for women because of my own experience, I actually say the same thing for other underrepresented groups as well, is that it is a field that's growing. We're not losing people in the field. We're growing with the need for IT people, and even especially cybersecurity are growing at like a good rate. It's a good pay field, right? So there's good salaries. It's, you're able to live very comfortably if you're working in an IT field in most cases. And then, there's a lot of flexibility. So for women, that's a key thing because a lot of them, tend to be primary caregivers. In a lot of cases still, the statistic hasn't, I know it's gotten better, but that's still a pretty heavy statistic. And so being able to have that flexibility means like maybe you can work from home, maybe you could drive your kids to school, maybe you can go pick them up, and you can manage your schedule to make your life easier for yourself. And so I think we're not really out promoting all of that when we're talking to women. And then, I just was reading on CNN like a few weeks ago, and they said the number of women in IT leadership, like CIO positions, it dropped during the pandemic.
Really?
It went from like 2% to 1%. So it doesn't sound like a big drop, but like that's like
right. That's one of the. Yeah. I like those figures that are like it's been cut in half, but and then to your point, it was already tiny, so it's even worse. Like, yeah.
So it's important for women to be able to see themselves in those career paths as well, because if you come in, like our company is great about hiring women, and I can't actually say we did a concerted effort on it. I think it was more organic. We're a great place to work. We're a great place to work for women. Women told other women. So like we have over 40% of our IT department is women. And so, people are like, how did that happen? I'm like, because, it's a great place to work for a woman. And so women would tell each other, and, it wasn't like we went out and did this specific marketing campaign for it, but I think companies do need to start making specific marketing campaigns. And like the college programs need to, when I was in high school, which I know was a million years ago, we all had that thing where we did the compatibility test. It told me like I should be it was something that I don't think I could ever see myself do, like maybe like a nurse or something, because I know there was blood involved. Whatever it was, there was blood involved, and I like can't do the blood.
That's a good filter for future jobs. Like, no, not interested in blood.
Exactly. So, but and then the next thing they said was psychology degree, and then like all these things. And it's funny because I love working in IT. I can't imagine being happier. And so even those types of programs and situations, we really do have to push bringing women into IT. And then in IT, I got involved with, after I left cybersecurity, I still like that career field, and I probably would have stayed in it except for that experience that, going to a conference and being the only woman in a room of about 100 people was very intimidating. Though I can't say that was the only factor, but I switched my focus. But the number of women in cybersecurity is super low too. So now I work with the Women's Security Alliance, trying to bring more women into cybersecurity, because, they say that the numbers are like 25%, but those numbers are skewed by big companies from everything we've found. And I bet the numbers really closer to about, 10% of the women in cybersecurity, employees in cybersecurity are women.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, the approach you're going over, which is, it's not demystifying, but it's just like, and not redefining, but like just going over that the jobs are normal. And like, it's not some weird, strange expertise, like weirdos over there,
Yes.
with a strange lifestyle and like, whatever. It's not super, I guess, as you said, it's not that it's super nerdy stuff, right? Which is, it's similar to, and then there's also just the aspect of like doing more marketing, like with the platform stuff we were talking about, right? Just kind of walking people through like, hey, this is pretty good, right? Like here, like it makes your day, the platform here makes your day-to-day life work out better. And similarly, like, I don't know, a job in IT, like you were saying, it's satisfying, right? Like whether you're doing desktop administration or programming or whatever, like it's a good job, which, I think it is hard to like imagine that like one can be qualified to do an IT job. We spent so many like decades making it seem like it's really difficult.
Yes.
Which is great for salary negotiations, but like it becomes very limiting when you need to get more and more people involved in it. So that's nice to kind of redefine that.
Yeah. The other thing I always stress is, if you're building products, right? So like we're building marketing products for our customers. And if you have all men, developing those products, in some cases, you're not considering like how different personalities think, right?
Right.
And so I always use this example of this box that we got we went and we got these earbuds, and they were like super cool. And I was super excited to see them. I don't know why they were earbuds, but still, you get something new, you want to see it. And so driving back, and, my husband's an engineer, not a box engineer, but he's an engineer. And I work at IT, so we're both kind of really analytical people. And so this box, it looks like on the ends that you open up the end of a box, right? You get a box, you open up one end, and then you go to the next. This thing, I was trying to figure that out, but it was like befuddling me. And then my husband grabbed it and he stuck his finger, and it basically was a box that like had a little box.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, who designed this? Like, it didn't even like cross my mind as that's the way that would work. And so when you're building products, if you're missing key segments of the demographic, like women or like other underrepresented minorities, you're not building your best product. And so companies should have, that alone is a very strong reason that companies and universities and, even high schools should get involved and say, okay, we're going to make this world a better place and more easy for everybody, but more on the top at the corporate level. If you don't have people representing all your potential customers involved, you potentially are losing some of those customers because, I had a bad experience with that box. I still have those headphones, but people, if it's an app and they have a bad experience with it because they can't navigate, they're going to go find something else.
Yeah. I mean, most businesses want to work with as many people as possible and have as wide an appeal. So it's good to have as many different people as possible in your organization to reflect that. And I think I know the kind of boxes you're talking about. I think I've been flummoxed by those myself. Like that. Yeah, that is true. Like, just don't be clever with boxes.
Yeah, right.
People have a lot going on in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't need a puzzle.
Yeah, that was kind of like a puzzle for me. Yeah. I said, because they want to tear it apart, but I'm like, I don't know how to get this box open without tearing it apart.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks for going all over that with me. I think I'm always really interested in how people are getting platform usage and getting them in place there. Because, as you're going over, once you get something that is nice, that is automated enough and like self-service, like all the great things that you want from a platform, it just lets you get on to the actual work. But it can be difficult to justify doing all this new stuff. And then as we discussed at length, like marketing it so people know about it and get the enthusiasm to not only use it, but like learn how to use it and go through that time. So that was great. Do you have anything you want to point people towards if they're interested in more? Or like, I know you're in the vanguards and you mentioned the organization that you work with, but what would you point people towards to look at more if they wanted to?
So the vanguards is actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a great. So if you have any of the Tanzu products, having somebody in the vanguards gives you a leg up because you learn more about the products. You get like some insight into the products before they're released. You sometimes get input into the products before they're released. So that's a great resource for companies that want to build platform automation, especially in the Tanzu space. It's also you meet a lot of great people in that. I was just out in North Carolina, and so I got to spend some time with the leaders of that group, and they're fantastic people. And I've met really people that are just fantastic and built really good networking relationships with people at other companies that, sometimes they can help you fix problems faster too. And then on the personal side, definitely look into the Women's Security Alliance. It's WOMSA.org, WOMSA.org. It's a great place. If you have daughters and nieces or anybody who is looking for a good career option, there's a ton of jobs available in cybersecurity. We're trying to fill those positions and increase the number of women. I think otherwise they can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes we have, which you could find it too if you wanted to, but you, the listener, can just go to tanzutalk.com and search for this episode and find it. Well, that was great. And we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.